What is going on, guys? It's week 7 of fantasy hockey. If you've been watching these videos, you know the drill. We're talking about the teams with the best and worst schedules, the streamers to maximize your games, and also some new must-add players. Starting off with the teams with the most off nights, only one team has 3 off nights, that team being the Anaheim Ducks. I know their opponent goals against average doesn't look the best, but they do play Chicago and Buffalo in 2 of these 3 games. So yes, Ducks players are going to be very good for this week for maximizing your games. With that being said, we have some teams that have 4 games and 2 off nights this week. It's not the best, but it's still solid. And those teams are Utah, the San Jose Sharks, and the Edmonton Oilers. We also have some teams that have 3 games and 2 off nights. I'll get into the strategy of streaming these teams in just a little bit, but those teams are the Winnipeg Jets, the Dallas Stars, the Buffalo Sabres, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. As you guys can see on the left side, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday are considered off nights. Tuesday has 7 games, so it might depend on your league if you have a utility spot in terms of if there's going to be an open roster spot on Tuesday, so make sure you check that out. But as I'm talking about these teams, I'm considering Tuesday an off night. With that being said, Thursday and Saturday are heavy nights, especially Saturday where almost every NHL team plays. And in terms of how I recognize teams having off nights or not off nights is 8 games on a given night. That's the threshold that we look at. So yeah, let's move on to the least amount of games for this week. A lot of teams that only play twice, guys. Not ideal, but it is what it is. We have the Devils having the worst schedule, undoubtedly. 2 games and 0 off nights and a 2.50 opponent goals against average. So not only do they have the least amount of games, but they also have the second lowest opponent goals against average as well. We also have some teams that have 2 games, 1 off night. Not good either. Predators, Canucks, Kraken, Kings, and Canadiens. A lot of these teams not having the best opponent goals against average either. And then we have the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have 2 games, which is not great, but both of them are off nights, so not terrible. Moving on, we have the easiest and hardest opponent schedule. These are the teams with the opponents that let in the most amount of goals. We have the Jets taking the number 1 spot, then the Bruins, the Lightning, the Leafs, the Red Wings, the Blackhawks, the Utah Hockey Club, the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Montreal Canadiens. Then the teams with the hardest opponent goals against average, we have the Flames, the Devils, the Predators, the Penguins, the Ducks, the Canucks, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Seattle Kraken, the Florida Panthers, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the St. Louis Blues. Moving on, let's talk about some streamers to maximize your games for this week. Like I told you guys, the Ducks have the best schedule this week because they are the only team that has 3 off nights this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Make sure you check if Tuesday is an off night for you. But yeah, typically there's a lot of solid options on the Ducks. I know the Ducks are not the best team, but typically these guys are lower roster percentage players. So yeah, just taking a look here, Frank Vatrano is probably the best. He's back in the top 6. He was on line 1 for a second there, but I'm pretty sure he's on line 2 right now. But he's moved up to Powerplay 1 over Cutter Gauthier, which is definitely big for his value. I mean, you could see with Vatrano's ice time, it has steadily increased over the last week or 2. So yeah, he has the potential to put up points. He has those elite peripherals. Definitely a fan. And the rest of these guys are solid. Troy Terry getting very good ice time. He's a good player. Leo Carlson, he's solid too. McTavish, he is injured day-to-day, but he could return. Cutter Gauthier, he finally got a goal, guys. But yeah, I mean, he's an okay option. He's not the best, but I do think he had some bad puck luck. So maybe he could turn it around. Olin Zellweger, he's a good player, not only to stream, but to hold long-term if you need a defenseman. And then obviously some deeper league options here, Ryan Strome, Trevor Zegras, and then a peripheral demon in Radko Gudas. Moving on, I want to specifically highlight 2 teams that play Monday and Tuesday. We just talked about the Ducks, obviously, but also the Oilers play Monday and Tuesday. So it's definitely worth adding them on Monday and dropping them Wednesday. Or if you're watching this today on Sunday, pick them up if you have an extra ad and get those 2 extra games. I talked about the Ducks already, but obviously with the Oilers, there could be some solid options. Nugent Hopkins is a guy that I do think is going to bounce back very soon. He may have been dropped. I would suggest streaming him for these 2 games. Matthias Ekholm, if you need a defenseman, I don't typically stream defensemen, but yeah, he could be solid. And then some deeper league options, Victor Arvidsson, Adam Henrique, Podkolzin, Jeff Skinner, who's on like the 4th line, I believe. I don't know what's going on with him, but yeah, these guys are some deeper league options, Matthias Janmark, Corey Perry, etc. Then we have another streaming strategy, picking up these players on Monday and dropping them Thursday. These teams are teams that play on Monday and Wednesday, both off nights. So you get those games, you try to maximize your schedule. And yeah, these teams are the Philadelphia Flyers, the San Jose Sharks, and the Dallas Stars. There's so many options with these teams, especially the Flyers and the Sharks, because they are typically lower roster percentage players. Really depends on your league settings and which players are available. But yeah, I would recommend using this streaming strategy to maximize your schedule. The last streaming strategy is picking up players on Wednesday and dropping them Saturday. The only team that you can do this with are the Buffalo Sabres because they play on Wednesday and Friday, which are both off nights. So yeah, if you pick up some Sabres players on Wednesday and drop them on Saturday, it could help you maximize your games. All right, moving on, let's talk about some power play updates. The Anaheim Ducks, Frank Vatrano, like I said, up to power play 1, Gauthier down to power play 2. They split the units evenly, so it's not the biggest value bump, but Vatrano's ice time has gone up considerably. So definitely a fan of this move for Vatrano in fantasy. McTavish is out day to day, so they have Ryan Strome on power play 1, but McTavish will be returning soon, so just a short-term deployment change. Then we have the Calgary Flames. Matt Coronado is up to power play 1. I don't know exactly what they're doing with this power play because I saw that Kadri was on the second unit a couple of days ago. But then I looked at power play time for a specific game and Kadri was like second. So I don't know exactly what they're doing, but it seems to be a trend here that Coronado is on the power play 1. So certainly an interesting option in a deeper league. Next up, we have Jackson Blake, who is now on power play 1 with Seth Jarvis out. Jarvis was put on the IR, but he's expected to practice next week. So this is not a long-term injury. It's only short-term. Regardless, as long as Jarvis is out, Jackson Blake should be an interesting option with that power play point potential. Then moving down, Alex Vlasic is power play 1 with Seth Jones out. Jones injured his foot. We don't have a timeline just yet. It's supposed to be at least a week, but it could be longer, guys. Maybe when I post this, we'll have some news here. But if you need a defenseman, Vlasic is a very good option. He gets a lot of ice time. He puts up good peripherals, and now he's going to have that power play deployment. So certainly worth a look. Speaking of Chicago, Teravainen, Bertuzzi, and Donato are still on the power play 1. This power play has not been good. The offense has not been good, so I'm not expecting a massive bump to their production, but it certainly bumps up their value a little bit. Moving down, we have the Colorado Avalanche. Nichushkin is back, so is Drouin. And what we're seeing here is Lehkonen and Middlestat still on the power play 1, and we have Nichushkin and Drouin on the power play 2. I expect this to change, guys. I think Nichushkin will find himself on the power play 1. There's no reason why he shouldn't be on that top unit. He's an absolute monster. And then whether it's going to be Drouin or Middlestat or maybe even Lehkonen is sort of up in the air. So yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on that, but that's what it's looking like at the very moment. Moving down, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets. Fantilli has been moved up to the power play 1 finally. Cole Sillinger down to the power play 2. The only concerning thing I have for Fantilli is that Kent Johnson is returning. So there's a chance when Kent Johnson comes back that, Kent Johnson's on the top unit over Fantilli. Kent Johnson is not returning just yet, but he is practicing, and we'll see when he comes back. It should be in the next couple of weeks. Actually, guys, I just checked Twitter, and Kent Johnson is expected to return next week. So yeah, even though Fantilli's been moved up to power play 1, we'll have to see what they do when Johnson returns. Moving on to the Stars, they're still splitting units, guys. It's an absolute disaster for fantasy owners. Yeah, it is what it is. The Red Wings, Seider is still power play 1 over Eric Gustafsson. Good news for him. Uvis Belinskas, still power play 1 on the Florida Panthers. Adam Boqvist has not played in quite a bit. Belinskas is definitely the guy to pick up if you are in desperate need for a defenseman. Then with the Los Angeles Kings, we have Byfield on power play 1, which is great news for Byfield owners, but they have moved Brant Clark to the power play 2. They currently have 5 forwards on the power play 1, so they're keeping Alex Laferriere on there. I believe they moved Kempe to the point in Clark's position. I don't know if this is going to last. I think they're just trying to get Byfield going because he hasn't been good. But yeah, definitely not good news for Brant Clark owners. So yeah, we'll see what happens, guys. I will keep you updated if things change. Then some more power play updates. Eriksson Ek is out day to day. It's only a short-term injury, but with that injury, we have seen Johansson and Hartman on power play 1. So in the very short term, those guys receive a deployment bump. Then we have the Montreal Canadiens. Kirby Dach and Mike Matheson are still power play 1. Hudson, he's gotten a little bit of a look on that top unit in some games, but it's still Matheson's spot to lose. So yeah, that's how the cookie crumbles. Then we have the New York Islanders splitting units equally if you're looking at power play time per game. I believe they have Wallstrom and John Gabriel Pajot and Lee on the power play one, but it's equal time, so it really doesn't matter too much. We'll see how that changes as time goes on. Then with the Flyers, Emile Andre and Sean Couturier, power play one. I don't know what's going to happen with this power play. Torts loves to mix it up, especially with the defenseman. It's like a revolving door with the defenseman, but that's how it's looking like right now. Then we have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Rust and Raquel are still both on the power play one together. They previously had Letang and Carlson on that power play one together, but yeah, this is what it's looking like. Very good news for Rickard Raquel owners, because that was a fear, Brian Rust coming back and taking Raquel off that power play one. So yeah, love both of those guys as ads. Then with the Sharks, currently they are splitting units, I believe, in terms of the last game that I watched. It's too small of a sample size right now because Wallman just returned to see what they're going to do. So, yeah, I mean, if you look at the last game, Wallman got some looks with the considered top unit, and then Liljegren got some looks. Wallman got good power play time that game. So, yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. St. Louis Blues, Falk and Braden Shen are on the power play one, and we saw Neighbors on there with him as well, but then Peronovich, if you're looking at the last game, got decent power play time as well. So Scott Peronovich, the defenseman, may be getting a look as well. We'll see what happens there, but Robert Thomas will be returning in the next couple of weeks. So just a short-term deployment bump for these players. And with the Leafs, Nyes is still power play one with Matthews out. Utah, Kerfoot is power play one. Barrett Hayden is power play two. Barrett Hayden was also moved down to the third line, guys. Maybe he's just not that good. Maybe he's just not a good hockey player. I've come to that conclusion at this point. Then Yun Ford, Jonathan Leckery, Mackey. I'm butchering that pronunciation for sure, but I haven't seen the Canucks game where he's played, so I don't know the pronunciation. But with this player, he is getting a look on the top line and the top power play unit with Brock Besser out, so definitely worth a look in a deeper league. Then with Vegas, I believe it's either Nicholas Roy or William Karlsson on that top unit. Roy is officially on that first unit, I believe, but in the last game, William Karlsson had more power play time than Roy in that game. So not exactly sure what that's going to look like, especially with Mark Stone potentially coming back sometime in the near future, guys, because he hasn't been put on the IR. It's considered day-to-day, so yeah, we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated. Okay, let's talk about some forward ads. I'm going to do this a little bit more rapid fire, guys. Valery Nichushkin, back and healthy, very good peripherals historically, should end up on the top unit. May not be the top line, but still very good. I think his roster percentage is way too low. JJ Peterka, he has 16 points in 16 games, line one, power play one. Roster percentage is still too low. Frank Vetrano, back on the power play one, elite peripherals, very good ice time lately. As long as he's getting the type of ice time that he's been getting, he is going to be very good. May not score the same amount of goals that he did last year, but still a big fan with this ice time. Then we have Brian Rust. Rust percentage is way too low on Yahoo. He's on the power play one. He's in the top 6, puts up good peripherals. It's a no-brainer. Gabriel Velarde, I still think his roster percentage is too low, guys. I've been talking about this guy for the entire season. His deployment is not going to change. I know he got moved down to the second line in the last game, but that's only because they were losing so badly to the Florida Panthers. So yeah, still a massive fan of Velarde. He'll be first line power play for the majority of the year. Then we have Arturi Lehkonen. I expect him to get bumped off this top unit potentially in favor of Nichushkin, but as of right now, he is on line one, power play one, getting elite ice time. It's a no-brainer ad. Kirill Marchenko, still line one, still power play one, still producing. I do think he may cool down a bit, guys, but you have to love this deployment. And he takes a lot of shots too, so he has that in the peripheral department. So yeah, definitely a big fan, and he definitely has breakout potential. Then we have more players. Rickard Rakell, power play one, even with Russ back, great peripherals. Josh Norris moved up to line one, still power play one, great peripherals. Stefan Nason, still power play one, moved up to the top 6. Very good news. Loving his ice time, loving the peripherals. Pavel Dorofeev, line one, power play one. Very good, low roster percentage guy. Dylan Cousins in the top 6, power play one. Very good peripherals. I think he's due to bounce back. Braden Shen, power play one with Robert Thomas out. I know Thomas is returning soon, but regardless, really good peripherals, really good ice time. Very good in the short term and maybe even the long term. New York Islanders players, John Gabriel Pajot, elite ice time with all the injuries that they've been dealing with. Line one, power play one. Anders Lee, same thing. Both these guys put up really good peripherals. And then moving on to the next page of must-add forwards, We have Matthew Nye, still power play 1 with Matthews out. Adam Fantilli moved up to power play 1. We'll see what happens when Kent Johnson returns, but he has that breakout potential. Good peripherals as well. Fabian Zetterlund, good ice time. Very good peripherals. Very solid option, an underrated option in a lot of leagues, guys. Very low roster percentage currently on Yahoo. So, Cal Palmieri, another Islanders player who has seen a lot of ice time with all of their injuries. Very good peripherals. Big fan of his protection. William Karlsson could be power play 1 with Mark Stone out. Jonathan Leckery-Mackey. I know I'm butchering that pronunciation, guys. But line 1, power play 1 with Besser out. We'll see what happens. I don't know exactly when Besser is going to come back. I believe he's out indefinitely. For the short term until Besser comes back, he is going to be very solid. Then we have Sean Couturier, line 1, power play 1. William Eklund back on the first line, back on the power play 1. Not officially the power play 1 because they're mixing up the units. We'll see how that shakes out, but getting good ice time lately, so definitely a good sign. Then we have Trevor Moore, moved up to line 1, not power play 1, but still, I like his ice time. Troy Terry, line 1, power play 1. Ryan Donato, still line 1, power play 1. Matt Coronado, moved up to power play 1, getting very good ice time, puts up solid hits as well. And then we have 2 more players on this list. Jake Neighbors, he's in the top 6 on the first line, and he may be power play 1. I'm not exactly sure because Peronovich got more power play time than him in the last game, but Neighbors is typically their net front player. So, I like his ice time. I think Robert Thomas coming back is going to help him. That should happen in the next couple of weeks, and he puts up good hits as well if your league counts those. Then finally, Jaden Schwartz of the Seattle Kraken. He's currently line 1, power play 1, and getting really good ice time. So, I just think he's underrated if you're looking at his roster percentage on a lot of platforms. Then finally, we have Jonathan Drouin. He's back and healthy. He puts up terrible peripherals, so you sort of need him to get back on the top unit for him to have any sort of value. So that's why he's lower on this list, but if he ends up back on power play 1, his value will skyrocket. So he's worth an add in a deeper league. Then we have Jason Zucker and Alex Kerfoot, both line 3 guys, but they're both on the power play 1, so they do have value there. Nicholas Roy could be power play 1 with Stone out. Not sure with the whole William Karlsson getting more power play time than him in the last game, but could be a solid option. I know he's on the 4th line, I believe, guys, so that's why he's lower on this list. And then finally, Jackson Blake, power play 1 with Seth Jarvis on the IR. This is only going to last, I believe, maybe 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, but that obviously is a huge bump to Jackson Blake's value. Moving on, let's talk about some new defenseman adds. Thomas Chabot, he's playing really well. Love his ice time, love his peripherals. And Jake Sanderson has not been good, guys. Jake Sanderson only has 1 even strength point. He's had 9 power play points of his 10 points. And Chabot could be a guy that ends up back on the power play 1 if this power play falters. So something to watch out for. And I do think that his roster percentage is going to go up in the next months or so. So could be a good option if he is available. Then we have Travis Sanheim. Sanheim's a guy that's not on the power play 1. Maybe he'll end up on there at some point because the power play 1 defenseman is a revolving door for the Flyers. But his ice time has been insane lately, putting up really good peripherals, very good protection, but he is very streaky, guys. I'm sure he's going to go on a slump soon, and everyone's going to be pretty mad that they picked him up. But I still think he's worth an add if you need a defenseman. Next up, we have Jake Wallman. I understand the concerns that he might not be power play 1, and we don't know what's going to happen with this power play because it's too small of a sample size. I think in the last game they split the units, so can't definitively say what's going to happen with this power play, but regardless, in the first game that Wallman returned in, he had 24 minutes. So he's really getting a lot of ice time. He's putting up peripherals. He had an assist last game, and I do think his roster percentage is still too low. So I'm still a fan. Then we have Olin Zellweger, had a 3-point night, still leading the Ducks in power play time per game. He has that breakout potential. Definitely a fan. Alex Vlasic, this is definitely an underrated low roster percentage guy. Probably my favorite must-add defenseman considering his roster percentage on Yahoo currently. So, the reason he's a must-add defenseman is because Seth Jones injured his foot and was put on the IR. We don't have the exact timeline for Seth Jones, but it could be for a couple of weeks or maybe even more. Maybe when I post this, we'll know more information, but for now, Vlasic is going to see a bump getting that power play 1 time. He already puts up decent peripherals, and he already gets a lot of even strength ice time as well. So definitely a fan. Then we have Uvis Belenskis, still power play 1 on the Panthers. It's a highly coveted position. His peripherals are okay as well. So yeah, I think he's underrated, especially if you're looking at his roster percentage. Then we have Bowen Byram. He's getting increased ice time lately. He's not going to be a power play 1 guy, so that does cap his ceiling, but yeah, I'm loving his ice time. I'm loving the production that we're seeing, and I think he's a solid option if you need a defenseman. Moving on, we have 3 more defensemen. Timothy Liljegren of the San Jose Sharks is one of them. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with power play 1, but Liljegren is still getting some power play time. His peripherals are solid. The ice time is decent, and his roster percentage is very low. So definitely worth a gamble in a deeper league. And then we have Emil Andre. He's getting looks on power play 1, and he is producing. But like I said earlier, the defenseman on the power play 1 for the Flyers is typically a revolving door. So with that being said, wouldn't expect Andre to have insane value long term, but if you are in need for a defenseman, you are in desperate need, then Andre could be a solid option. And then finally, Ryan Pulock. He's not a power play 1 guy. He's not some sort of offensive beast, but his ice time has been very, very good lately, and he puts up solid peripherals as well. Finally, we have some goalie ads. Lots of goalies to talk about here. Alexander Georgiev, he was injured in the last game, but it's supposed to only be a short-term injury, so I still like adding him because he has been playing well, and the coaching staff clearly wants him to start more games. So being the starter on the Colorado Avalanche, a team that just got Nichushkin back, just got Drouin back, it is a highly coveted position to be in for Georgiev. So yeah, definitely a fan of him still. Then we have Pyotr Kochetkov. He was also injured, but it's only day-to-day. And we have learned that Freddie Anderson may be needing surgery. So if that's the case, then Kochetkov is going to be the #1 starter on a very good team for the entire year. So absolutely a fan of holding Kochetkov long-term. Then we have Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. James Reimer was claimed, and Devin Levi has not been good. So my expectation is that James Reimer is going to be the backup goalie, and Devin Levi is going to get sent down to the Rochester Americans. So if that is the case, then Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is going to see a lot of volume, and he's been pretty good, guys. He's definitely bounced back from his slow starts. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan. Next, we have Joey Daccord. Yes, Grubauer is back, and he will eat into some of Daccord's starts moving forward, but in my opinion, Daccord is just such a better goalie compared to Grubauer, so I think Daccord's going to gain more starts moving forward, and I think it could be a 2-to-1 split for Daccord. So yeah, I think he's going to be solid long-term. Next up, we have Adin Hill. Ilya Samsonov is back, and he's healthy, so he will eat into Hill's starts a little bit, but I do think it's going to be a 2-to-1 split, or maybe even more for Adin Hill, and he plays on a very good defensive team, so I think he's going to be good long-term. Then moving on, let's talk about some of these more goalies. Logan Thompson, the Capitals broke up their split and gave Thompson 2 games in a row. In the second game, he didn't play the best, but I do think if Thompson continues to outperform Charlie Lindgren, he will earn more starts. So he's a goalie I would definitely take a look at if you need one and you're hoping for some volume in the future. With the rest of these goalies, Kevin Lankinen, I know Shelov's just got his first win, but Lankinen is the better goalie. We still don't know what's going on with Demko, so Lankinen is going to be a volume guy who has played really well this year. Still a big fan. And we have Destin Wolf, playing really good. Could see him gaining more starts in the future because I do think he's a better goalie than Dan Vladar. Peter Mrazek, a volume stud. You know, the Blackhawks are sort of a mess here, but Mrazek is going to get a lot of volume if you're in that type of league that values volume, like a Yahoo default points league. Moving on, we have Justice and Noonan, only a short-term stream because Georgiev is only expected to be out for a couple of games. So, yeah, short-term stream for Noonan. Then we have Karel Vejmelka. He is getting more starts. He is playing better. Ingram has not been the best this year. I'm not counting on Vejmelka to be this very good player. The Utah Hockey Club clearly aren't ready to take that next step yet, but if you're in desperate need for a goalie, he could get more starts as we progress through the year. Then finally, 2 more goalies. John Gibson. Again, this is a deeper league play. I'm not suggesting you guys pick up Gibson if you're in a league with 14 teams or less, but anything more than that, he's a guy that's back and he's healthy, and he's going to probably split the starts with Lucas Dostal. So, yeah, could be a solid option in a deeper league. Then finally, Ivan Fedotov. Eriksson is out 1 to 2 weeks, so he's probably going to see the majority of the starts for the next week or so. So if you're in desperate need to stream a goalie, he could be a solid option in terms of volume. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.